From the air, it looks like a scar cut across the fields of County Durham, a line etched into the land stretching beyond the horizon. But this is no natural wound. This scar is a trace of a revolution, the world's first railway, where iron, steam, and ambition carved a path that will forever change the history of transportation and make the world slightly smaller. On the morning of 27th September 1825, the people of County Durham awoke to a day unlike any other. Word had spread for weeks. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Along the newly laid track, thousands gathered, climbing trees, crowding embankments, leaning over fences. They had come to witness a world first, a public railway, steam-hauled, carrying not just goods, but passengers, moving faster and louder than anything they had ever known. The air was thick with the smell of coal smoke. Then, out of the haze, it appeared, a strange clanking machine with a tall chimney and gleaming brass fittings. This was Locomotion No.1, built at the Stephenson's works in Newcastle upon Tyne by George and Robert Stephenson. Its pistons pumped, its connecting rods blurred, and its funnel belched steam as it hauled a train unlike any the world had ever seen. Behind the wagons of coal was something even more curious, a passenger carriage called Experiment. It had no predecessor to copy, with no blueprint for what a railway coach should be. Its designers produced what many onlookers called a shed on wheels. Wooden, boxy, and lacking a suspension. It was basic and uncomfortable by modern standards, but for those first travellers, it was a marvel. Here was proof that ordinary people could travel by steam. It was history's first passenger carriage, and it would set wheels in motion that have not stopped turning to this very day. This was the Stockton and Darlington Railway, the line that sparked the railway age, transformed transport and propelled the Industrial Revolution forward. On that historic day, the train departed from West Auckland, carrying coal eastwards through some of the region's most remarkable engineering feats. In this film, we're going to follow that original route and explore what physically remains. We'll trace the ghosts of 1825 that still lie in the landscape today. This is Rails and Revolutions, the history that built us, the forces that shaped us. Our journey begins at Phoenix Row, a small hamlet at the foot of the Etherley Incline in County Durham. This place is considered the symbolic start of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. This is where coal wagons from nearby mines around West Auckland and Shildon were first assembled for their journey eastward. Phoenix Row was a hub of activity, with workers and their families living in the terraces that still line the narrow path leading to the base of the incline. From Phoenix Row, the wagons, which at this point in the journey had no passengers and no locomotive, were hauled up the steep Etherley Incline using stationary steam engines and ropes. The incline stretched for about 1.12 miles, with a ruling gradient of 1 in 34, far too steep for locomotives. The lowest section survives today as a substantial embankment over Bout's Gill, nearly 10 metres high, with culverts still channeling the beck beneath its summit. Near the top, the site of the old winding engine is marked by a dry stone enclosure and grassy mounds, and an engine pond once supplied water to power the incline. Phoenix Row and the Etherley Incline together illustrate the ingenuity and ambition of the engineers and workers who made the first public steam railway possible, laying the foundations for a network that would transform transport and industry forever. Once lowered down the other side of the hill, the wagons were pulled by horse across the Gaunless Bridge. An early and significant milestone in railway engineering. Built in 1823 to 24, it was one of the very first railway bridges to incorporate iron into its design, and the very first to use an iron truss, which is the framework of connected beams arranged in triangular shapes to distribute weight more efficiently. A design principle that will go on to dominate bridge building for the next 2 centuries and symbolise the forward-thinking spirit of the Stockton and Darlington Railway at a time when timber and stone were still the dominant construction materials. By 1901, however, the bridge was struggling under the ever-increasing weight of coal wagons. It was dismantled and removed. Though its stone abutments were left in place, albeit altered with recesses to accept new plate girders, the original ironwork was stored at Brusselton Colliery until 1927, when it was reassembled for display at the York Railway Museum to commemorate the centenary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. From 1975, the bridge stood in the car park of the National Railway Museum at York, carrying a coal wagon of the old Shildon type. Remarkably, it has now spent far longer as a museum piece than it ever did in active railway service. Most recently, in 2023, it was dismantled once more and re-erected at Locomotion Museum in Shildon, placing it much closer to its original home. The story of the bridge isn't finished. That same year, Historic England awarded Durham County Council £161,000 to repair the surviving abutments. A new deck will be added to tie them into the wider Stockton and Darlington Railway walking and cycling route, ensuring that this groundbreaking structure continues to serve the public, this time as a pathway to both history and landscape. Around 1 mile further along the track, we find one of the most remarkable engineering feats west of Darlington was the Brusselton Incline. The incline stretched approximately 0.75 miles with a steep gradient of around 1 in 15. Over that distance, the track gained around 200 feet in elevation, a formidable challenge for the engineers and workers of the early 1820s. To overcome this, George Stephenson and his team devised an ingenious solution. A stationary steam engine at the top of the incline hauled wagons up and lowered them down using a rope and winding drum system. This allowed coal and later passengers to traverse the steep gradient safely and efficiently. The line also features stone sleepers, a design choice born of necessity. Early engineers had to contend with heavy loads and primitive track technology. Timber sleepers were prone to rot and could shift under the strain. By using stone, they created a durable, stable base for the rails, capable of withstanding the forces of heavy coal wagons and the occasional locomotive. These stone blocks, set directly into the ground, provided a firm foundation and contributed to the incline's reliability. Despite its initial importance, the incline's operational life was relatively short. By 1856, a new line from Shildon Tunnel to West Auckland made the incline redundant, and it was eventually abandoned. Standing on the site, one can almost hear the creak of cables and the hiss of steam as wagons inch their way up the incline. Imagining the ingenuity and determination that made this extraordinary feat possible. From Brusselton, the line descended into Shildon, where one of the most important moments in railway history took place. On that morning of 27th of September 1825, here at the Mason's Arms at Shildon, was where the first paying passengers boarded a public steam railway. Men in their Sunday best, women in bonnets, children clutching at their parents' hands, all stepping nervously into wooden wagons that had never before carried passengers in such a way, were transformed into vessels of possibility. Imagine the emotions. For some, it was the excitement, the thrill of being part of a spectacle that had already drawn national attention. For others, there must have been apprehension. This was uncharted territory, a machine of iron and fire, shaking the earth beneath them, promising to carry them faster than any horse could run. Further along the track, Shildon was transformed from a small rural village into the world's first true railway town, following the arrival of the Stockton and Darlington Railway extension in December 1825. At the heart of this transformation was the Soho Works, established by Timothy Hackworth and his team. The site became a bustling hub for building and maintaining locomotives and rolling stock, crucial to keeping the railway running. Nearby, surviving workers' cottages and terraced houses reflect the lives of those who built and operated the railway, a tangible reminder of the community forged by this industrial revolution. The Locomotion Museum now stands on the historic site, housing early locomotives linked to Hackworth's legacy, allowing visitors to connect with this pioneering idea. Although the very first paying passengers boarded at Shildon on the morning of 27 September 1825, it was in Darlington that the railway's true public debut was felt most strongly. By the time Locomotion No.1 steamed into the town, pulling its long line of coal wagons and converted passenger carriages, crowds had gathered in their thousands as it stopped just east of the present-day North Road station. There was no station building at this time, as railway stations were not even a concept at first. For many, this was the first time they had seen a locomotive in motion, and the spectacle of a steam-hauled public train arriving at Darlington made headlines across the country. The most enduring monument to that day still stands, the Skerne Bridge. Built in 1825 to carry the railway over the River Skerne. It remains the oldest railway bridge in the world, still in continuous use. Its graceful stone arches have survived nearly 2 centuries of traffic, a symbol of both engineering skill and the permanence of the railway age. Darlington's role did not end with the opening day spectacle. Just north of the town stood the Hopetown Carriage Works, founded in 1853. Where generations of skilled workers built and repaired rolling stock for the Stockton and Darlington Railway, and later the North Eastern Railway. Further across the town from the works, we find one of the lesser known features, the Arnold Road Tunnel, designed by George Stephenson. Now, a main road passes above this structure, but originally it was the Stockton to Darlington line. Over the years, it's been widened, and inside you can see the joins that have resulted from this. Further along the line, we find Heighington Station. Although the station itself was not opened until a year after the line opened, it was here in 1825 that Locomotion No.1, designed by George Stephenson, was placed on the track before its historic first journey. There's even a remarkable story from that morning. When all was ready, it was discovered that no one had a means of lighting the boiler. Stephenson sent a messenger off in search of a lantern, but before panic could set in, a navvy named Robert Metcalfe stepped forward. Using the burning glass he normally kept to light his pipe, he focused the sun rays and lit the boiler. And so, with the spark from a pipe light as glass, the age of the railway began. Heighington was the world's first purpose-built railway station provided by a railway company, built to meet the growing demand for passengers and goods. Originally named Aycliffe Lane, it went through several renamings to Aycliffe and Heighington, then just Aycliffe, before finally becoming Heighington Station in 1874. The name it carries today. Further east, near Preston Park, the railway route continues to be visible in the landscape through surviving embankments and cuttings. These earthworks form a quiet but powerful tribute to the early railway engineers, cutting through the landscape to maintain the gentle gradients required by the primitive locomotives. The traces here remind us of how the Stockton and Darlington Railway shaped the region's development and communities. Finally, our journey concludes in Stockton. the town lending its name to the railway. It's here we come to St John's Crossing, the final stop on that historic 27th September 1825 journey. George Stephenson hadn't originally intended this to be the terminus, but Wharf Exchange siding, located just 200 metres further along the bank of the River Tees, wouldn't be completed for another few weeks. So St John's Crossing became the first stopping point for paying passengers. This station holds particular historical significance. The first section of track in Stockton was laid there in 1822, and the world's first rail passenger booking was made at that location. Wall plaques commemorate these milestones, though the very first booking may have occurred in the railway hotel next door. The siding and subsequent extensions quickly proved profitable. Coal from the Durham coalfields began flowing to London, easing the worries of the railway backers. Although nothing remains of Wharf Exchange siding today, a commemorative silhouette sculpture has also been installed into the railings of the Riverside Walk, providing a visible reminder of Stockton's pivotal role in railway history. Also, on its way to this wharf, at Castle Wharf, there is a modern memorial to the line. Where you can still see the surviving metal rails. As they made their way down to the river. Stockton was more than a stop. It was the gateway through which the Industrial Revolution and the Railway Age touched the town, the region, and eventually the world. The Stockton and Darlington Railway started out moving coal, but it ended up moving the world. From these simple tracks, the Railway Age spread far and wide, shrinking distances, powering industry, shaping modern life. Today, bridges like Skerne, embankments, engine houses and museums stand as reminders, not just of engineering skill, but of ambition and perseverance. They tell the story of a community, a region, an idea that changed everything. Nearly 200 years on, the sound of wheels on rails still echoes, a living memory of the day the world went faster. If you believe these stories matter, the ones held in steel, in stone, in silence, then help keep them alive. Like this video, share it with someone who's walked these tracks, crossed these bridges, or stood on these embankments and felt something stir. And subscribe for more stories from the places that shaped us.